Nintendo has always placed tremendous importance on their handheld division, which is something other major companies like Sony have never really done. From the days of the Game Boy to the modern 3DS lineup, Nintendo has constantly pushed the envelope and created some amazing machines. With the recent release of the new Nintendo 2DS XL, gamers around the world are talking about the 2DS lineup again. Well, look no further because we've created a list of 10 facts you didn't know about the Nintendo 2DS. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our content and ring that bell to become part of our notification squad so you never miss a video. The 2DS only has one screen. One look at the 2DS and you immediately see the difference between it and the 3DS. The 2DS is not the typical clamshell design we've seen with every DS system since the original was released in 2004. The 2DS has a slate design and cannot be folded up like its 3DS brothers. We'll get deeper into this later in the video, but right now we'll be focusing on something that may have flown under the radar. What many gamers don't realize is underneath the surface, the 2DS is also very different than your 3DS in the fact that it only has one screen. You're probably thinking to yourself, the DS in 2DS stands for dual screen, so how can there only be one screen? Well, the 2DS has one giant screen that's split into two by a piece of plastic. Seriously, the screen is huge and even gives tablets a run for their money. This was done by Nintendo to reduce costs. Nintendo definitely kept their word as the 2DS is currently priced at a lowly $80. That's very inexpensive, and it's no surprise the 2DS is selling very well because of it. It might not be the nicest looking handheld console, but it's the best bang for your buck. The 2DS XL is just as powerful as the 3DS XL. On July 28, 2017, Nintendo released a bigger and better version of the 2DS, rightfully called the 2DS XL. The 2DS XL is a very impressive little machine with the exact same screen sizes as the 3DS XL. Honestly, who doesn't love big screens? Devices have been trending towards larger and larger screens throughout the years, and Nintendo's handheld division is no exception. If you thought Nintendo would just increase the screen size, you'd be wrong. They knew if they wanted their new 2DS XL to sell well, they had to go big or go home. Nintendo's pretty much lived with this mentality since day one, which is why they made the 2DS XL just as powerful as the 3DS XL. They both sport the same processor, meaning games will run just as smoothly on the 2DS XL as on the more expensive 3DS XL. If you don't quite care for the 3D features some games use, the 2DS XL is a great option and will save you about $40 in the meantime. It's a good quality product that isn't incredibly expensive. Once again, Nintendo shows that they really know how to please a crowd. You won't accidentally eject games or SD cards from the 2DS XL. The 3DS and 3DS XL were both incredibly popular systems for Nintendo, but for the gamer on the go, they each had one pretty big flaw: the game card slot. Some gamers put their system to sleep and throw it in their bag. Every step they take can accidentally eject the game because the 3DS game card slots were designed much like the Game Boy Advance. They're wide open with nothing to close the card in. The difference between the Game Boy Advance and these two 3DSs is in terms of ejecting the game cartridge. You had to pull out a Game Boy Advance game, but you have to push in a 3DS game. What this means is you'll never accidentally eject a Game Boy Advance game, but you could accidentally eject a 3DS game. Luckily, Nintendo has rectified this issue with the new 2DS XL. On the 2DS XL, the game card slot and the SD card slot are right next to each other, so unlike other 3DS systems, it's not a pain to remove or replace the SD card at all. To top it all off, there's a large cover for both of these slots, so you'll never accidentally eject a game card or an SD card ever again. The 2DS XL is slimmer than the 3DS XL. We've already talked about how the 2DS XL has screens just as large as the 3DS XL, and even a processor just as powerful. These upgrades from the 2DS are what make the system just as good as the 3DS XL. But the fact that it's slimmer may make it an even better system. To make the 2DS XL slimmer than its 3DS counterpart, Nintendo made a few changes. First, they relocated the home button from the bottom of the lower screen to underneath the control pad. Second, they rounded all the edges of the system. Third, they moved the camera onto the hinge and made it stick out of the system a little bit. By making all of these changes, Nintendo not only made the 2DS XL more comfortable to hold, they made the bezels of the system incredibly small, allowing the system to be pretty much all screen from top to bottom. These smaller bezels allowed the 2DS XL to be slimmer than its 3DS XL counterpart. To be honest, it's only slightly slimmer in comparison to the 3DS XL, but the reduced height, width, and weight will make a big difference to the nomadic gamer. The 2DS XL stylus is very tiny. The Nintendo 2DS XL is an amazing system, but even the best systems have their flaws. Every Nintendo DS has come with a stylus. Through all the many iterations and improvements to the DS and 3DS lineup, the size and shape of the stylus has stayed relatively the same. It may be a bit of a nitpick, but the main issue with the 2DS XL is its minuscule stylus. Seriously, this thing is ridiculously small. Usually, they're about the size of a finger, but the one on the 2DS XL is half a finger long at best. Sure, you can buy a larger stylus, but it won't fit seamlessly into the 2DS XL, so there's no point. Those of you with small to medium-sized hands don't need to worry at all. The stylus may be small, but it's not awkward to hold, and there's not much of a noticeable difference between the standard stylus. Sadly, those of you with big hands have much more to worry about because this thing will feel like a toothpick between your fingers. We would recommend that you pick up a larger stylus if you're of the big hand variety, or else you can make do just fine with what the system has to offer. The 2DS can't do anything 3D. Well, this point is pretty obvious, but it's still worth mentioning. We all know the 2DS can't do anything involving 3D. That means that if a game you're playing utilizes 3D features, it won't be noticeable on the 2DS. This isn't news to anyone, but it may come to a surprise that not utilizing the feature is actually a good thing. First of all, 3D is a gimmick. Honestly, it was a gimmick which began with movies before making it to TV and then into our video game systems. Every little 3DS game uses 3D features in the first place, and it doesn't really make your game experience more immersive either. If immersion is what you're into, you should buy a VR system. If you use the 3D feature on your 3DS, you're pushing the system harder, which means it won't hold a charge as long. The 3DS XL averages around 6 hours of battery life without the 3D feature, which is not bad at all. The problem is when you have the 3D feature on, the battery life is a measly 3.5 hours. The 2DS and 2DS XL don't have amazing battery life themselves, but by not being able to use the gimmick that is 3D, they'll have more consistent battery life. The 2DS is very child-friendly. If you're looking to buy a handheld console for one of your children, the 2DS is the best option out there. Like we've already mentioned, the 2DS will not turn heads, but it gets the job done. That's exactly the kind of handheld you want your kids to have. It's not expensive at all with a price of $80 and is surprisingly durable. Seriously, it's like Nintendo made the 2DS specifically for kids. The price tag is what will immediately draw you in. You don't need to spend $180 on a 3DS XL when you can buy the 2DS for less than half the price. In the end, the 2DS is not much more expensive than a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One game, which is a hell of a bargain. The 2DS is also very durable. Since they ditched the clamshell design for a slate design, it's more difficult for children to break the system in half. We all know children have temper tantrums easily and often, so if you give them an expensive 3DS XL and they snap it like a twig, you lose much more money than if they try to break a 2DS. They might throw the 2DS against the wall, but even then, your losses won't be as bad as if they were given a more expensive model. You can take 3D pictures on the 2DS. One thing that's very confusing about the 2DS is its camera. It has two cameras just like the 3DS. These two cameras are used together to create 3D photos, but the 3DS doesn't have a 3D screen, so what exactly is the point of this, Nintendo? The only way to see these 3D photos pop is by transferring them to someone else's 3DS, which is a real big pain. Even if you got the cameras to simply take 2D photos, they're not very good. The pictures come out very grainy. But who actually uses these handheld consoles to take pictures anyway? Smartphones nowadays have amazing cameras the 2DS and even the 3DS for that matter cannot even compare themselves to. Nintendo could have taken the cameras out completely and put an extra speaker there instead. The sound of the 2DS is not very good compared to the 3DS and the 3DS XL, so it would definitely have been a better inclusion. The 2DS would have been exactly the same as the 3DS, but without 3D features and a camera. It probably would have brought the cost down even lower if they got rid of the camera. It was a missed opportunity for Nintendo. The screen of the 2DS is not high resolution. Let's be honest, the screen resolution for the entire 3DS lineup isn't great compared to Sony's handheld console, the PS Vita. Emulator users have found a way to show off 3DS games in HD, and my god are they gorgeous. The visuals look amazing and the colors just pop. Of course, Nintendo knew if they put two HD screens on their 3DSs, it would ramp up the price by hundreds of dollars. But that being said, they could have at least tried to keep up with the PS Vita's 5-inch 544p display. Neither the top nor bottom screens come close. The 2DS's screen is just as good as the 3DS's screen, with both the 2DS XL and the 3DS XL having bigger screens. Even then, the 2DS XL and 3DS XL pale in comparison to the PS Vita with a 240p display on both screens. In fact, the entire 3DS lineup, including the 2DS, has 240p screens. The XL models don't get better image quality, they just get a bigger image. That being said, it's not like the screens of the 2DS and 2DS XL are bad, but after hours and hours of playing, it's definitely going to put some strain on your eyes. Even if the screen of the PS Vita is better than the 2DS, the 3DS lineup wins this handheld console war because of their awesome library of games. It's honestly not even close. The 2DS has great durability, but at what cost? As we've already mentioned, the 2DS has a very unique design compared to all the DSs that have come before it. We've also mentioned its slate design has made it quite the durable machine since it cannot be broken in half nearly as easily. These two features are what make the console so good for both older and younger gamers. We've already covered the stylus, which is the only real flaw of the 2DS XL, and like every system, there's also a flaw to the 2DS. It's not nearly as portable as the rest of the 3DS lineup. Since the 2DS is a slate design and not a clamshell design, you can't close one screen on top of the other to make it small enough to fit in your pocket. The 2DS can't slide into your pocket unless you're wearing cargo shorts, which you should never ever wear unless you're a dad, of course. The thing is, does anyone really travel with the 3DS in their pocket? Probably not many, if any at all. So the lack of portability isn't much of a big deal in our opinion. The fact that 2DS is inexpensive, durable, and surprisingly comfortable to hold while being compatible with the entire 3DS library completely outweighs the fact that it's not very portable. Well, hopefully you learned a few new things about the Nintendo 2DS by watching this video. Did any of these facts surprise you? Are there any facts that we may have missed? Let us know in the comments section below. Also, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with our playlist. Thanks for watching!